Hello everybody, welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video we are going to talk about functions. Why do we use functions, how do we use them, and why do we use them? So before we get started, please if you learn a thing or two and you enjoy the video, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any suggestions for me or you want me to make any video on a certain topic, please drop it in the comments. Okay, so what is a function and why do we use a function? Before we get started, let's say we want to just to make a simple program that compares two integer variables, and we want it to print out which variable is bigger, right? So let's say we have var1 and int and var2, okay? And then we're going to let the user, we're going to ask them to input the values. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for the second variable. Oh, why did I? Oh, sorry about that. Okay, and we're going to enter the second variable. And then after that, we want to make sure that if var1 is not equal to null and var2 is not equal to null. So if they're not, we want to do a simple comparison, right? We just want to compare if var1 is bigger than var2. Go ahead and just print out var1 or the first variable, which is var1 is bigger than the second variable, and let's print out the second variable in a new line. Else if var1 is equal to var2, in that case we want to say just a simple logging that variables have the value of, and we can print out either, okay? And then else, in the last case, that is that var2 is larger the first variable is smaller than the second variable. Okay, so we're just going to do that, and let's go ahead and run this. Enter first variable, we'll enter 5, second variable will enter 10, the first variable is smaller than the second variable. So, right, we're just comparing them. Now let's say we want to run this code twice or 3 times. or 5 times or 100 times? Are we going to copy and paste this that many times? Are we going to do a for loop and go ahead and run this that many times? And let's say we want to call this from a different source file. Are we going to do the same thing? That's where the function comes into action. A function is basically, think of it as a block of code that can be used and called from anywhere in your program as long as you follow certain conditions. So let's say, first of all, how do you declare a function? First, you have to declare the return type of the function name, and then parameters inside, right? And then inside the function, we go ahead and have the block of code, right? So let's say in this case, we don't have a return type, right? We're not really returning anything. In that case, we say void for the return type. And for the function name, it can be anything we want. Let's say we are compare to numbers, right? And for the parameters are the variables that are used when you are declaring the function. So you need the variable type. In this case, we are comparing two numbers, two variables, and both of those variables are integers. So in this case, we have two integers, right? Some people, so for now we're not going to, and then also you need to have the name of the variable, right? So var1 and var2. And inside the code, simply, you need to do what you want to do with the code. So let's say we want to do this, right? Right? So we are basically just comparing them, and we return at the end we're not returning any value or any variable, and we are just comparing the two variables. We're doing the same thing that we were doing in our main. And in order, now you ask yourself, yes, this function is here, but this function is not in main. So how do we execute this function? We simply do this. We just call the function and we pass in here arguments. So these that you see are called parameters that are used when you are declaring the function. And here we are going to pass the variables. So var1 and var2. So basically these variables are going to get passed into this, right? The program makes a copy of those variables and then performs whatever operation you want. Now, the names, yes, they do match, but they don't have to match. I just named them the same thing just out of convenience. But this can be, for all we care, this could be called the ball or something, right? But the reason I did that just because we already have the block of code written with the var1 and var2. But this can be named anything, right? So let's say we go ahead and run this. Enter the first variable, 15, second variable, 20, and the first variable is smaller than the second variable. Just like that, we can get rid of this, and it's much neater, and this is better because you can go ahead and call this as many times as you want. If you want to call this 10 times, you can go ahead and do so. Now, as you may notice, it does look weird having the function declared and defined over here. So now we are going to talk about the second concept, which is a prototype. What is a prototype? A prototype is a function where basically first you want to declare the name of the function, the return type, and the parameters, and then you can put the definition under main, right? So that way it looks better and it looks neater, and it still works the same exact way, right? And also when you do a prototype, so this is called a prototype, right? When you do a prototype, you don't even have to have the name of the parameters. It can just be the return type, and then you go ahead and call them here. I mean, you name them there. So that is that. But let's say you didn't have a prototype, right? And you just wanted to include the definition under main. In this case, what is going to happen? You are going to get a compiler saying that identifier is not found, and that is because it is after main, right? There is no prototype for it. It doesn't know that it exists. So this is a prototype. Now, obviously, there are other ways of declaring a function, meaning, yeah, this is the way you declare a function, but you can place them differently. You can place them in different header file, but we'll get into that in separate videos once we start talking about classes and whatnot. So, just to reiterate what we spoke about in this video, a function, think of it as a way to compress certain block of code and be able to call it and execute it from different places in the program. Instead of having to write this many times, you can just go ahead and just call the function, right? And as we saw, there are different ways of declaring a function. You can declare it where you declare the prototype and then you put the definition under main, or you can just put the definition all together without the prototype above main. And just to talk about this again, the function, when you declare a function, you need a return type. This can be an integer, this can be a void, and you also need the parameters, right? But when you call them, these are called arguments. So when you call it from your main or from somewhere else, that is when you call the function, the values, the variables that go inside when you're calling that function are called arguments, but these are called parameters, right? And this is the return type. So let's say we wanted to change the return type and we wanted to return an integer. And we simply just wanted to return the, we have to change the return type up there. It has to match exactly. So we just, if variable 1 is bigger, we're going to return var 1. And if they're the same, we are going to return var 1 because they are equal. And if it's smaller, we are returning var 2, right? Else we're returning 0. So let's notice something. So when you go ahead and run this, enter the first variable 10, 5. The first variable is bigger, right? Because we logged it. But how do we get what we returned here? How do we get that? We simply do that by doing this. Because there is a return type, say result equal to 0, and we simply just go ahead and assign result equal to the calling of the function. And then after that, we can go ahead. Let's say we wanted to get rid of the logging. We say stdc out, the result is $20, $15, the result is 20. So why do we assign, why do we store the result in a variable? That is because we have a return type. The function is returning something. When we said void, the function wasn't returning anything. Okay, so we have reached the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel. It helps out a lot. And also, if you have any suggestions or you want me to make a certain video on a different topic, please drop it in the comments. Hopefully in the near future, I'm going to make other videos on passing arrays into functions, references, pointers, and passing by value. So we'll talk about that in more depth. So as always, I'll see you in the next video.